Well, with me is Clare Barber, joining us to talk about the previous year, looking forward to next year. And the starting point is just asking people about the whole thing with the virus, the shutdown, all that sort of thing, and asking you how you think the government did.
So I think we're in a very strong position. I absolutely get that, but I've certainly not been shy in challenging some of the decisions that were made. I think that there was a delay initially in terms of shutting the borders. That's something that I had a personal experience with someone coming back to the island. My husband came back to the island having travelled, and we certainly felt that there were no rules in place. Interestingly, the place he would travelled from, there's now lawsuits, there's all sorts going on. We've just seen in the news today about the buses that he was herded onto, which then left him with coronavirus. So he was diagnosed with COVID-19, but in fact wouldn't have had to have isolated as per our rules at that time. Chose to because he's socially responsible. We thought it was absolutely the right thing to do, but technically didn't have to.
So a quicker lockdown is what you think should have happened?
Yeah, so I think there was almost a sort of missing in action feel for the first 3 or 4 days. There was lots happening, there was lots being talked about, and nothing was changing. So that, I think that there was a missed opportunity very early on. And I think there was, I've spoken freely about the fact that I had concerns about people from the island being stuck abroad without any ability to come home and feeling very much left out.
I hear
in the
your
cold.
mailbox is full, not only from your constituency, but it came apparent that you were a person to go to almost. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so it was, all sorts of people were getting in touch with me from across the island, people really, really distressed, and some really quite harrowing stories of people who were stuck off island, who were, yes, in the very simplest of words, safe, but when you're paying for your accommodation abroad and you're still paying your mortgage or your rent at home and you're trying to pay to get somewhere, and of course the flights were going up exponentially. People in New Zealand were being quoted £15,000 for one person. Most of us, if I was in that situation, the money would run out. I mean, £15,000 isn't something I've got sitting in a bank account. I don't think most people have. So to be able to pay that and to continue paying the accommodation you're in on holiday, which you'd expect to be 1 or 2 weeks, maybe 4 if you're really lucky, and your home accommodation and your bills, they don't go anywhere, and also you can't work. So your employment is going to lose interest quite rapidly. So there were people who were really on the breadline. It was. And
did you have to go to the chief and bang his door? Because he was saying that there was quite a lot of people not on side with it initially, but they've all drifted away because it all has, as it is at the present time of recording, under control. Do you agree that you're happy with him, what he's done now?
So I'm comfortable with what's happened over the last couple of months. I'm concerned about the emergency powers. I think we've got a very important piece of work to do around the civil contingencies to make sure that it can respond appropriately in a crisis, but equally those powers aren't abused. There was obviously challenges over the planning, which I wasn't happy with, and then I do have concerns around the ability now for people to travel. So I'm certainly not advocating open borders. That's I don't want to be misquoted, which I have been in the past.
Well, we don't edit this one, so
which is great.
I was going to ask you in part 2 about that, but could I really want in this section try and talk about last year / the whole thing? What has it been besides that particular issue? What has it been for you?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. We've obviously there's been lots of moves positively in terms of the Jonathan Michaels review, transformation. That's all had to slow down because of COVID-19, but now that's being picked back up, which I think is really a positive move. We had issues around education, and we've now got the Beeman's report. So I think there's a lot of things that have come to almost a bit of a head, and we're starting to see some quite clear action plans. So there's lots of very big issues.
And what have you been involved in? What bills, what things have been pushing through in the last 12 months?
So we had sex offences and domestic abuse have obviously come through, and then the third part of that's justice reform, which is going to come through from Home Affairs. So those have been the big ticket ones. In terms of health, those ones are still to come. We've got Manx Care coming through, which the Minister will lead on.
You've kept with the health, and not everyone has managed to do that. So, I mean, obviously they seem the right fit, being a nursing background. Challenging? What you thought? I mean, because you got an inside track, I'm sure of it the other day. You know more about what's going on up there than maybe some other people do.
Yeah, and you know,
I'm talking about nobles here, by the way.
Yeah, and I want that to be used positively. You know, I've got a really good relationship with a huge number of people working in all different areas in the hospitals. It's not just nurses. You know, I've got people within the medical profession, healthcare assistants, people working up in the canteen, the housekeepers. Actually, all of those are so critical to how we deliver health services. And I've also got a lot of friends and colleagues from previously working in the community. And actually, as we move into the new transformed health service, the health and care side need to come together and work better together.
How's it looking? You know, you're seeing the inside of this. I mean, is it going all right? Will it be happening on time? Good idea?
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely the right thing. I think it needed to happen. For me, I think now there's a huge piece around making sure people understand how that will affect them. You know, there shouldn't be huge changes actually on the shop floor. People will still be working to deliver the best care for the patient, which, having worked in the hospital and the health service, I can confidently say, you know, that's what everyone wants to do. When people go into caring professions, their absolute sole purpose is to look after people and care for people. So I think what we now need to do is make sure that the framework and the governance actually support them to do that, and that's where I think we've failed. So there's been issues around whistleblowing. There's obviously a committee looking at that. There's been issues around complaints, and people just haven't felt confident that when things are being raised, there's been the right action. And what we need to do is put all the frameworks and policies in place so that when people do raise a concern, when people do use that duty of candour, we absolutely have everything there to support the person who's raising it, to not come and beat them with a big stick, but to say thank you, because actually we can't make things better if we don't know about the problems.
I just feel this is a story where we're talking about forever and ever and ever. It'll never be perfect, but anyway, let's park that one. Let's talk about the prom. I mean, this is you're in this not only as Douglas East, but you're on the scrutineering side of things, the scrutiny committee.
Yeah, so we've got the Environment and Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee, which I chair, and we've got a separate inquiry for this, because initially, obviously, Rob Collister couldn't sit on the committee because he was in Enterprise. So, but we've now got all members of the committee plus 2 extra members, and it's a huge piece of work in terms of scrutinising both the looking back now at the planning and missed opportunities, looking at the support schemes, but there'll also be a piece once the prom is finished. Please let the prom
let's
be
do that
finished.
part too. But the last year, I mean, I went to one of those scrutineering things, and people were wriggling it almost. No one seemed to know some basic answers. It almost seemed like you must have been terribly worried when you heard "I don't know" coming out of people's mouths.
I mean, we've been gravely concerned. Obviously, as you know, we've taken evidence, and I know you've sat there, and that has been an issue. Certainly, it has improved. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but when we started, you know, it was almost businesses just hadn't been considered. It was almost like it was an afterthought. Oh, goodness me, actually, the businesses will be affected. And we're seeing very much now with the accommodation sector, hospitality sector, which of course is a large part of the prom. Those businesses have had support schemes because of COVID-19, but actually the support schemes that would be enough for people off the prom aren't enough for people on the prom, because actually the impact of the prom is so critically different. So businesses who are on the promenade just simply aren't able to sustain, because people can't park, they can't get to them, and it's almost become a no-go zone. People will just avoid the prom rather than going down and trying. Now, I want to put a message very loud and clear. Actually, we've got a lot more parking now on the promenade. It has improved, and I'd say to people, please do support these businesses, because they are really struggling. It's been incredibly difficult for them, and it's been 2 years nearly now. You know, it's a really prolonged period of time where they've
open
struggled.
Broadway, then they do change their mind. You know, it was definitely going to open, and we had this to the ministers, and of course, the one thing when you put down a date is you like to take a fall when it doesn't happen. Are you worried that things?
Yeah, and I am concerned about the end of March deadline. You know, I am concerned.
I think the minister seems now worried. He's almost indicated in one of your meetings. Isn't it?
They're saying that they are still going to hit that, and I think, to all intents and purposes, they will have two-way traffic and they will have access on and off. Whether it's completely finished and there's no little areas that just need tidying up, I wouldn't want to put any money on it. But
the trams, you were keen to get them finished, weren't you? Which side of the tram debate were you on? The horse trams?
My issue with what they've proposed now, with a delayed process, actually, I mean, the tram bit is almost one of the easier parts to lay because it's to the side, but they're talking about bringing the roundels up at the bottom of Broadway, you know, the roundabout.
Yeah, because roundels, and our new word we like to use.
Because they bought the granite. So they've actually bought the granite to do it, but because they have to lay, and I'm no engineer here, Paul, but from what I can understand, they have to lay a big piece of stonework underneath to support the granite.
Yeah.
That's too big a piece of work, so they're actually not going to do that now. They're going to do a nice sort of easy finish in fairly sort of standard road finishing products. But because they've already bought the granite, they are planning to go back in and dig that back up over next Christmas.
They get more information from you probably than they're getting from everywhere else. I mean, it hasn't been the best communication anyway. We'll
the communication is
right. Okay.
yeah.